Well, good morning, everyone. And I have to say thank you to Anthony for doing that song, because he put it in and then he took it out and I went, what? That's one of my favourite songs. And so I said to him, would you please put it in again? And he did, so thank you. Well, I've been getting to know some of you over the last month or so, and we've had Zoom meetings, and so I've been seeing people with heads on screens, and came over to staying in Bethlehem and met up with quite a few of you over the last few days. So we've been talking a lot and eating a lot. And the food is very good here, I have to say. So it's been a lot of fun. So it's really great to be here in the church with all of you, and there's more people that I'm going to be meeting today, I can see, so thank you for that. So you learnt a little bit about me earlier. My husband and I moved from Melbourne, Australia to the United States in May, and about a month after we came here was the Unity Convention. And that was great because I got to catch up with all my friends that I hadn't seen for a few years, but there was a lot of talk about how quickly the world's changing and about our Unity communities and how we're needing to adjust as churches to these changes in the world that we're living in. And so I thought, well, I'd like to talk a little bit about that today and really look at what is community, why do we come here, and where did it all start? So community matters is what we're going to be looking at. I'm a fan of Richard Rohr. He's a Franciscan monk, and I was reading some of his work, and I came across this. He says, pay attention. When considering the wider world, pay attention to your soul, your neighbourhood, your local and regional stories. Nurture your personal well-being and that of your community. Otherwise, you'll neither thrive in a challenging world nor be useful to the service of the common good. And I thought that this is so relevant to what we're experiencing today. We need to pay attention to what's happening out there in the world, but to look to our local communities and how do we deal with these issues that we're seeing within our own community. In 2019, a study was done of 20,000 Americans, and they found some interesting statistics. Almost half of the people that they spoke to said that they felt lonely. 57% of Americans eat all of their meals by themselves, and 30% of households in America consist of just one person. And they also found that people who didn't interact with community had a 32% higher risk of stroke, so they were physically affected by a lack of communication with other people. The benefits of being in a community, so this is the good news for all of you, is you will live longer, you will have better mental and emotional well-being, and people spoke about being part of a community and said, well, it really inspires me to be part of a community, and there's a lot of opportunity in the community. And so you can see the first part of the study, there's a lot of loneliness, and I actually think that these figures might be higher because this is before the pandemic. So we're seeing a lot of loneliness, and definitely I think it's worth being part of a community because there's a lot of really good benefits in there. So this idea of living in community and the importance of it was really taught by Jesus, and he did everything in the community. So he taught all of his teachings in the community. He was very much interested in how we relate to each other, and the word commune actually means of the heart. So when we speak about community, we're speaking about having a heart-to-heart connection. And so Jesus told all of his stories in community. He demonstrated his his miracles in the community, and for him the community really was everything, and how we relate to each other is really the key to life. So his main teachings were love one another, love your neighbour. We know those sayings of his, and that was central to how he felt that we should be living together. And Jesus invites us into a kind of way of living that is all about relating, how we relate to each other, how we relate to the earth, and how we relate to God. And that really speaks to how we feel about ourselves as spiritual beings. In fact, Jesus said that God is relationship. Isn't that interesting? God is relationship. And so, although we may not always feel it, we are very enmeshed in relationship to each other and the world that we live in. And so the secret to community really lies in the way that we relate to one another. Now, this idea was followed through in the 1950s by Martin Luther King, and he gave it a name. He called it the beloved community. So I like that because it was a contemporary word that people could really understand, and it just said in that one word, beloved, what it was all about. So he followed this kind of community idea that was modeled with Jesus, and he spoke about how when we're in a community, it's really a collection of individuals, and yet we're learning how to not only love ourselves but everyone else and the earth as well. So he had a global vision, and he said that if we could learn to be in the beloved community, we could eradicate poverty and homelessness and, all these things that we see in the world at the moment. He said it's through the sharing of all of the wealth in the earth that we could really change the way that we live. And he said that shift would only happen through small spiritual communities such as the one that you have here. So over the decades, people have followed through with his ideas of the beloved community, and they've come up with some qualities that they identify as being essential to that community. So the first one is compassion, and we all know what compassion is. I mean, that's very central to the Buddhist movement. Love and connection, I would say that's a Christian community that a Christian quality that we talk about often. Deep and radical self-knowledge, that's our wish to be awake, to be aware, and to get to know ourselves. Healing, well, that's the unity movement, isn't it? The whole unity movement is built on healing. Vision, having a vision for the future. Pioneering is a willingness to try something new. Evolution and emergence is kind of what we're dealing with now. Everything is changing so quickly, and we're having to evolve, and we're looking at what is emerging, what's shooting up, this new something. Mutual support, the way that we support each other. Contribution, the way that we contribute ourselves. What can I give to the community? Possibility, we often come to this one when everything else has not worked. Okay, what are we going to do now? So what's the possibility? And the final one, resiliency, which is huge. We've had to do this. Actually, this group has been very good at this one. I'd say that's definitely one of the qualities of this group, to be in pandemic and without leadership. It's very difficult, so well done on that one. So these are pretty well considered to be the main qualities of a beloved community, and you might like to look at that and just notice where, well, I've already told you one, strength in this community, but notice what you're good at, and also there's bound to be some gaps, and that's usual. And in today's workshop, we're going to really look at that a little more and work with that. So the problem that we have is that we live in an individualistic society, and our society is really built around the concept of ownership. And so we're almost trained to think that, well, you have to own a house, and then you put stuff in the house, and you have to own a car, and when you've got those, then you want to have some money in the bank, and you might want to have some investments, and that's very much a Western cultural way of thinking of things. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but when we do that at the expense of connection with others, I mean, I know someone who has 3 jobs, so he's trying to pay off his mortgage. He really has no time to spend with his partner. He doesn't have time for his children, and I think when that's out of balance, then we lose that sense of connection with another person. And when we're not connected, well, it's very hard to feel what another person feels, right? And then when we can't feel what another person feels, then we see behaviours like selfishness, greed, and those sort of things. And I think that there is a kind of looking out for number one in our society. I mean, it's a little bit confronting, I know, but we do talk about our family, our church, our political party. So Jesus was, in a way, just inviting us to step out of that a little bit, to step out of ourself and go towards the other person. So it's really a kind of moving out of our cultural boundaries. If we look at tribal society, and I'm thinking of some of the Indigenous people in Northern Australia, they're semi-nomadic. They don't have the same concept of ownership that we have. So they cross the land in one season, and then in the next season another tribe will cross the land. And so for them, the land belongs to everybody. They don't have that ownership idea that we have. And they talk about treading lightly, see? So they have a great reverence for the land. And I just wonder if we've lost some of that sense of what it really is to share everything, and that everything belongs to all of us. I think that most of us have really good intentions. And if we look at the pandemic early on, I mean, the media is very good at making us not always look so good. I remember seeing people fighting over toilet paper, let's say it. You know, people hoarding things, businesses price gouging at the start of the pandemic. And yet, that's just such a small part of what really happened. I saw a lot of generosity and a lot of compassion. So I think that we all do deep down have that sense of relationship with others and how important that is to be in community with others. So in the scriptures, there's a great story about Nehemiah. And Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king of Persia. So it's not really a job anymore. But Nehemiah was given wine as a gift, and not Nehemiah, the king was given gifts of wine, and Nehemiah's job was to taste the wine and make sure that it was good. And also to make sure it wasn't poison, so it was a bit risky. That in the Old Testament, we read about the story of the city of Jerusalem. Now, it was a holy city. There was a covenant between Abraham and God, and the city was built for the purpose of the Jewish people. And so the temple was central to the city, and next to it was like a university. I'm not quite sure what they called it then, but that's where the rabbis trained, or you could go and study the Torah. And then around the city was built a big stone wall, because invasion was a big thing then, and you needed a wall to protect the city. So what happened later on was the Babylonians came along and they destroyed the wall, and then all the Jewish people fled, and they went out, and the Jewish people had told everyone, well, the wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates have been destroyed by fire. So Nehemiah, because it was the holy city, he was really heartbroken when he heard this, and he said, when I heard these words, I sat down and wept and I mourned for days. And we do get a bit of sense of what he must have gone through. And when we read the words invasion, well, doesn't that remind you of something that's been happening in the world recently? I mean, you watch the news and these things happen and you get a sense of being heartbroken. How could this happen? You know, what is going on? So we can really relate to how he might have been feeling. So Nehemiah goes away and he prays on it. He's really distraught about it. And he starts to get a little bit of the inner voice. And what comes to him is that it's his job to do something about it. And he eventually gets the message that it's his calling to go and help the Jewish people rebuild the wall around the city. So he's a bit disturbed by that because he has this wonderful job with the king of Persia and it's very comfortable and he, safe and he likes it. Anyway, he talks to the king and the king says, I think you need to go, and he gives him permission, and so off he goes. And so, I mean, the question really for us is, what breaks your heart? What are you seeing that really breaks your heart? And I know that some people are brokenhearted by some of the things that are happening. They talk to me about it. And, it's really, I love that Nehemiah remembers to go and pray about it, because this is where he's getting some of his answers. And if we think about Ukraine, in many ways I think President Zelensky is like a modern-day Nehemiah, because he's rallying the people and he's bringing them together. What I find really fascinating about the story is that in Nehemiah's time, you're talking about a community that is made up of people all the same culture, they speak the same language, they are the same religion, and then when we look at Ukraine, it's totally different. So you've got a community made up of people who were born in different cultures, they speak different languages, and they're different religions. And so here's this Old Testament style of community, and we've made this great evolution to the modern day community. And it's diversity. This is what we're talking about, because we know deep down it can't really be like it was in the Old Testament anymore. We're all blended, we're all different, and we have to somehow be able to relate to each other, knowing that we are a diverse group now. So there was a question asked to a spiritual group similar to this one here, and they asked, what is community? And here's what some of them said. It's a group of people coming together to do something special. It's the family that is nearby. It's being connected. It's experiencing a shared purpose. It's feeling like I belong. It's connecting on a deeper level than just friendship. It's where you feel safe, loving, and supportive of each other. It's a place of learning. It's being okay to ask questions. And finally, the well-being of the community is my well-being. So what happened to Nehemiah? Well, he was going pretty well, and the wall was being built, but some of the people started squabbling, and they were having disagreements about things and saying it's taking too long, and you're not doing it right. You know how things go sometimes. And Nehemiah was a bit perturbed by this. And then someone sent out an open letter criticising him and saying he was this and that. And then he got a death threat. And he thought, what is going on? You know, I've got this calling to rebuild the wall, and it's an important vision, and all this stuff is happening, and it's going to go down the drain, and what am I going to do about it? So he did what he usually does. He went and he prayed on it. And he got the inner voice again, and the inner voice said, go and talk to the people. And so this is what he said to them. He said, do not be afraid. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome. And they got it. The people went back. They finished rebuilding the wall. And he was so thrilled. It's happened. The wall has been built. It was a big job. Just imagine if you had to rebuild the wall around the whole of Lehigh Valley, and that was your job and you were responsible. It's big, right? And so he was thrilled, and he looked at the wall. He said, this is wonderful. It's been completed. Now, I have to tell you something. During the pandemic, Melbourne got this great name as being the most locked down city in the world. I don't know if you knew that, but anyway, everyone was ordered to stay home. You're not to go to work in the city, you have to work from home, and you could only go out to buy food or for a medical appointment. So during that time, I was very happy because I had to go for a medical appointment, and I really wanted to get out of the house. So I had to go to the hospital in the city to see a specialist. And I went in, I parked the car, and I was walking up the main street of Melbourne. Now, there's 6.5 million people in Melbourne. It's a very big city, and it's usually bustling. And I was walking up, I was thinking, this is strange. And I looked around, and I was the only person walking in the main street of the city. And it was the eeriest feeling I could even imagine. And so the city, you think of it as being all about people rushing around, and yet it was just buildings and streets and a very, very odd feeling. So this is kind of a little bit what happened for Nehemiah, because he rebuilt the bridge, and then he looked at the city and he said, where are the people? So you know that ad on TV, it says, a city is not a city without the people in it. It's true. And so he said, what am I going to do? The mission is not really fulfilled until the people are here. So he said, I'm going to create a homecoming. And he went and got a genealogical list of all the people who'd lived there before. And he sent out personal invitations. And then the people started coming back to the city. And he said, this is great. The mission is fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And so community is a great opportunity for us to engage the heart, to practice our beloved community qualities. It's about how we relate with each other and with the earth and with God. And really, it's an opportunity for us to step out of our comfort zone, go towards the other. And community gives us a chance to be just so much more than we can be just on our own. So we might come across some challenges like Nehemiah, but there's always the ability to overcome. And so it said that God is one, and for God to be loving, there has to be two, because love is always a relationship. For God to be joy, there has to be three, because joy is when two people share a common delight in a third something. Just like the young couple who has a child. And surely that's what Jesus meant when he said, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there I am amongst you. And so it is.